Today, we are opening a file that, well, it captivated and frankly terrified an entire country.
It really did.
And it forced some really difficult conversations about institutional trust, professional training, and, that dark intersection of personal relationships and lethal force. We are talking about the case of Corporal Caroline Kangogo.
This specific series of events, which all unfolded in July 2021, it just transcended a mere crime story.
Oh, absolutely.
It instantly became this high-stakes, real-time national security event in Kenya. The sheer audacity of it, combined with the fact that the perpetrator was a serving police officer, that just instantly elevated the threat level and held the entire nation, as a lot of sources described it, completely on edge.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the immediate shock was really just the beginning, wasn't it?
Just the tip of the iceberg.
Our mission today is a true deep dive. We have to go far beyond the breaking news cycle.
Yeah, we do.
We need to meticulously parse the incredibly rapid timeline of events. I mean, just 48 hours that changed everything.
48 hours. It's incredible.
Then analyze the specific forensic evidence left at the scenes, build a comprehensive profile of the suspect, her training, her psychological insights, her career.
And then there's the aftermath.
Exactly. We have to look closely at the procedural chaos that followed, specifically that controversy around the postmortem and the burial delay.
And we've synthesized a wide breadth of sources for you, the listener. We've got detailed transcripts from NTV Kenya and Citizen TV Kenya, comprehensive BBC News Swahili reports, and various biographical profiles.
They're a really multifaceted view.
Absolutely. And the key is connecting all these data points to understand not just what she did, but how her professional background enabled her evasion.
And what drove her.
And how her personal motivations drove her highly, highly specific pattern of targeting.
Welcome to the Factatorium podcast, where we talk about the most interesting and puzzling stuff in the world around us. I'm Ken.
And I'm Jamie. Come hang out with us.
All right, so to begin, let's set the stage. What was the exact context here?
The core criminal events took place over an incredibly short and violent time frame. We're talking just 2 days in early July 2021.
2 days.
It started on a Monday, and it escalated almost instantaneously into this massive national manhunt. This rapid succession of events is just critical to understanding the state of panic that ensued.
The immediate impact, as you mentioned, was profound. Sources describe the story as one that put the whole country on edge. And we know that the public and the media, they were quick to draw comparisons to other large-scale atrocities.
They were.
Specifically, I saw this case was frequently compared to the infamous Onyancha case, who confessed to the murders of 17 people. But why did this case, involving only 2 initial victims, cause such a unique and pervasive national anxiety compared to, those mass-scale crimes?
That juxtaposition is the absolute core of the shock. The Onyancha case was terrifying, of course.
Of course.
But it involved a civilian serial killer, someone operating outside the structure of the state. This case involved a uniformed Corporal Kangogo. The shock stemmed from the breach of public trust. A sworn protector, a representative of law and order, was suddenly the primary threat.
It challenged everything.
It challenged the fundamental assumption of safety. And furthermore, the fact that the alleged perpetrator was a woman, that really challenged conventional expectations of who commits these kinds of calculated, rapid, and highly decisive murders. It just added an extra layer of intrigue and, frankly, disbelief.
That makes perfect sense. The threat wasn't external. It was coming from inside the house, so to speak.
Exactly.
So let's solidify the suspect's profile before we dive into the crimes themselves.
Okay. Caroline Kangogo was a police corporal, 34 years old at the time of these events. She was also a mother of 2 young children, aged 8 and 11.
Wow.
Professionally, she was far from a rookie. She enlisted in the police force way back in 2008.
So she had experience.
A lot of it. She was promoted to the rank of corporal in January 2015. So this is a person who had spent over a decade integrated into the police system, understanding its rules, its operations.
But its weaknesses.
And its weaknesses. That's the key.
And when we look at the victims, the pattern just jumps out immediately. We have 2 confirmed victims. Constable John Ogweno, a colleague in the police service, and Peter Ndwiga, a civilian who is 32 years old.
And what is particularly chilling, and this is the key insight from the sources, is the striking similarity. All her known victims were male and explicitly described as known to her.
So this wasn't random?
Not at all. This removes the element of random chance completely. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It suggests a calculated, intentional pattern of targeting based on existing personal connections, whether they were romantic, financial, or something else. The focus was highly, highly personal.
And the fact that the first victim was a fellow officer and the second a civilian, that shows an immediate lack of boundaries, an escalating threat that crossed professional lines and into civilian life within just hours.
It really does. And the nature of the search, which immediately pivoted to tracing her known acquaintances, that underscored the fact that investigators knew right away they were dealing with intentional targeting rather than some kind of general mayhem.
Okay, so let's dive into the details of that first murder, the one that put this entire horrific sequence into motion.
Right, the murder of Constable John Ogweno. This happened in Nakuru town.
And crucially, the location was the Nakuru police station parking lot.
Yes.
How does the setting the parking lot of a police station change our analysis of this crime? I mean, that's just brazen.
It dramatically increases the perceived audacity and premeditation. A police station is supposed to be the safest, most secure environment for an officer.
It's supposed to be.
Committing a murder there suggests two things. First, that she was confident enough to operate in an environment where she was highly known. And second, that she may have used her insider knowledge of shift changes, CCTV blind spots, or internal routines to ensure she wasn't immediately detected. It makes the crime feel like a deliberate internal execution rather than a spontaneous act of violence.
And who was Constable Ogweno? The sources give us a glimpse of a young man whose life was clearly on an upward trajectory.
Very much so. He was 28 years old, married, and his father, Sergeant Edward Dumbai, described him as a quiet man who actively avoided arguments.
And professionally?
Professionally, he was about to make a major leap. He had recently been interviewed for a cadet inspector position and was expecting a promotion to inspector.
So his career was taking off.
His professional prospects were improving significantly, which is an important context for understanding the potential dynamics of their relationship, whatever it may have been.
Now let's analyze the mechanism of the crime itself. Ogweno was shot on the right side of the head, and his death was attributed to fatal blood loss. The speed and method of death point directly to the precision she would later be known for.
The forensic evidence recovered at the scene included a spent bullet casing, which confirmed the use of a service firearm. But here is where this element of violence beyond the shooting emerges.
What do you mean?
Sources mention finding a stone and a piece of metal at the scene. These objects, according to investigators, were used to break the car window.
That detail is critical. If she broke the window, it suggests one of two things.
Right.
Either Ogweno was already inside, maybe sleeping or incapacitated, and she had to force entry to reach him, which implies premeditation. Or there was a struggle outside the vehicle, and the objects were used to smash the window after the shooting, maybe to get access to his weapon.
Either way, it suggests a scene of physical violence and forced entry, adding a lot of complexity to the idea of just a simple, quick assassination.
And this act immediately escalated the danger.
Massively. Kangogo allegedly stole Ogweno's Tesca pistol. Police later confirmed that this service weapon had 14 live rounds remaining.
So she's armed.
This single act transformed her from a murder suspect to an armed and dangerous fugitive with a significant amount of police-issue lethal force in her possession. The national manhunt was justified entirely by that fact. She was armed, trained, and mobile.
Okay, let's pivot to the really shocking connections to Ogweno's family, specifically his wife, Juliet Ogweno.
Yes.
This gives us a lens into the psychological dynamics surrounding the murder. Juliet confirmed to Citizen TV that Kangogo was in contact with her for about a month before John's death.
I mean, just think about that. This wasn't a secret relationship hidden from the family. The killer was talking to the victim's wife.
It's chilling. What was the communication like?
Seemingly innocuous, at least at first. Juliet recounted specific instances. On the Thursday before the murder, Kangogo called Juliet to confirm that John had arrived safely in Nakuru and had gone to work.
Just a casual check-in?
Exactly. Then, just 2 days before the murder, on that Saturday, Kangogo called Juliet again to confirm that John would attend their children's graduation, which was scheduled for that same day. These conversations highlight this bizarre, triangulated relationship where Kangogo was basically managing her alleged lover's logistics with his wife.
But the dynamic shifted when Juliet started to feel suspicious. She said she didn't initially suspect an intimate relationship was going on.
Right.
The red flag only appeared when Kangogo started referencing the children and made a specific, unsettling request?
That request was for the children to visit their father in Nakuru for some hangouts.
Okay, that's odd.
It's very odd. And Juliet stated that this request, coming from a woman she only knew as a colleague of her husband, it made her uncomfortable. She even mentioned wanting to make her anxious in response, which suggests this subtle power struggle, or at least a mounting distrust.
I can't even imagine. The killer, just days before the murder, is trying to secure access to the victim's children under the guise of a casual visit.
It demonstrates an extreme level of calculation and insertion into the victim's private life. It just paints this picture of intense personal entanglement and a motive that was deeply rooted in these complex relationships, which is why the targeting was so specific.
So following that first murder, Kangogo did not pause. She didn't hide.
No. Her immediate reaction was a strategic move for distance and evasion. She traveled approximately 200 kilometers from the first crime scene in Nakuru all the way to Juja in Kiambu County.
That's a significant logistical feat, especially when you're at the center of an escalating manhunt.
It's a huge feat. And the method of evasion was textbook, something a trained officer would know to do immediately.
She left her mobile phone behind at the first scene.
Exactly. This is a classic, highly effective technique to defeat the modern police dragnet.
Right, because they're going to try and ping the phone first thing.
First thing. By leaving the phone, she rendered police tracing useless for determining her immediate direction of travel. Investigators would waste valuable initial hours tracking a device that was stationary, giving her a vital, untraceable head start to cover those 200 kilometers to Kiambu.
Given her professional training, this was a perfectly executed, deliberate move to blind the immediate police response.
Absolute deliberate.
Now on to the second crime scene, which occurred at the Dedimax Hotel in Kimbo, Juja. The victim here was the civilian, Peter Ndwiga, 32 years old.
Sources indicate she lured the second victim into a hired room. And this is where the narrative around her targeting really solidified.
How so?
There was speculation, cited in multiple sources, that she promised an act of free intimacy to lure men into her trap. This suggests a manipulative pattern, using her gender and potentially adopting a slay queen persona, as later reports would detail, to secure easy, temporary compliance from her victims.
And the police were able to establish their presence at the hotel through CCTV footage.
Yes, the footage showed Kangogo and Peter Ndwiga booking the room together. And here's a detail that confirms her control and her financial independence. She paid the bill for the room herself.
So this wasn't a spontaneous encounter. It was planned and facilitated by her.
Entirely. And just like the first murder, the crime followed the same chillingly efficient pattern. Peter Ndwiga was shot in the head.
And the forensic detail is incredibly specific.
It is. The bullet entered from the right ear and exited from the left ear. This again points to extreme proximity, execution-style precision, and the use of the firearm as a primary, definitive tool of violence.
So the forensic conclusion that followed was crucial for connecting the two separate incidents.
It was the linchpin. A 9mm spent cartridge was found in the hotel room. This led investigators to confirm their beliefs that the same stolen Sheska pistol used in the murder of Constable Ogweno was used again in the murder of Peter Ndwiga.
This provided absolute confirmation that they were hunting a serial killer actively using a stolen police weapon.
Exactly. And the speed committing the second murder, only a day or so after the first and 200 kilometers away, demonstrates not only intent, but remarkable logistical capacity and psychological composure under extreme pressure.
Her escape from the Dedimax Hotel was equally calculated and deceptively simple.
It was. She provided the room attendant with a quick, mundane, and entirely believable lie.
She said she was briefly leaving to buy toothpaste.
Right. That small domestic detail is brilliant psychology. It normalizes her temporary departure.
So the attendant has no reason to be suspicious.
None at all. She ensured the attendant had no reason to immediately suspect anything was wrong. And of course, she never returned, leaving the blood-soaked body of Peter Ndwiga on the bed.
And eyewitnesses saw her leave.
Yes. Eyewitness accounts and CCTV later confirmed she left the establishment on a motorcycle along Thika Road, heading toward Nairobi. The ability to deceive, the swiftness, the ability to disappear immediately after committing such violence, it all speaks directly to her professional training and psychological control.
This brings us to the profile of Caroline Kangogo, which is essential to understanding how she managed to pull all this off and evade the full force of the police for so long.
Absolutely. Caroline Kangogo was born in 1987 in Kamogich, Elgeyo Marakwet County, making her 34 years old at the time. Her background was, On the surface, seemingly normal.
Normal.
Her parents, Mr. Barnaba Kipkip Korir and Mrs. Leah Kangogo, confirmed she was their first child and had been raised in a standard, loving environment.
We also have a detailed educational profile, which paints a picture of, diligence.
It does. She attended Niwa Nursery School in 1993, then Niwa Boarding Primary School. When she took the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education, the KCPE, in 2004, she scored 305 out of a possible 500.
Which is a respectable score.
Respectable, if not top tier. She completed her high school at Alphonsus Mute Girls School, where she took the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education, the KCSE, and scored a C.
So consistent but not exceptional academically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the most crucial and surprising detail in her history relates directly to her evasion capacity. And that is her certificate in Basic Skills in Peer Counseling from Keio Professional Counselors.
Okay, let's drill down on that. A basic skill certificate in peer counseling. Why is that so uniquely critical to a murder suspect's profile? It seems so contradictory.
Yeah,
Training designed for help, used for harm.
It's crucial because counseling, fundamentally, is applied psychology. It involves intense training in reading body language, understanding nonverbal cues, anticipating emotional responses, and managing the dynamics of trust and communication.
Okay.
Investigators specifically noted that this skill set might have helped her anticipate police moves, not just the technical tactics, but the psychological assumptions they would make about a fugitive.
So she wasn't just hiding from police procedures, she was hiding from police profiling.
Precisely. She would know how to maintain a facade of normalcy under interrogation or during routine interactions. She would know how to anticipate what investigators would look for in her behavior, how to manage her own stress response to avoid giving off suspicious cues.
And how to manipulate expectations during luring attempts.
Exactly. The ability to read and anticipate the mind of another person, whether a victim or a hunter, is a formidable psychological advantage for a fugitive. It allowed her to remain calm and calculated, while under the highest level of national scrutiny.
That deepens the context significantly. Now let's look at her professional career, which explains the physical and tactical capacity for the crimes.
She joined the Kenya Police College in Kiganjo in 2008. She was trained as a corporal in 2014 and served in a variety of key locations, starting at Mombasa Police Training College, moving to Kaloleni Police Station, and then spending time with the Railway Police Unit before her final posting in Nakuru at the Central Police Station.
And there, she worked in the anti-crime unit. Let's pause on that assignment. For listeners who aren't familiar with internal police structures, what does working in an anti-crime unit entail, and how would that knowledge help her evade capture?
An anti-crime unit is typically a highly operational, rapid deployment team. Their work involves intelligence gathering, quick response, surveillance, and often undercover operations, particularly targeting armed criminals and organized crime.
So she knew the playbook.
Intimately. This means she was familiar with police resources. She knew the safe routes, the high-risk zones, the common roadblocks, and critically, the internal communications codes and response times. She knew where the dragnets would be set up, allowing her to easily navigate around them. It's the ultimate insider knowledge.
And here's a detail that truly explains the lethal nature of the events. She attained a first class in shooting range classification.
That's not just competence.
No, this is certification as a sharpshooter.
And the term sharpshooter explains the methodology of the crimes. Investigators noted she used only one bullet per victim, demonstrating remarkable precision.
Which is the difference between an amateur, who might fire multiple rounds in a panic, and a trained professional.
Absolutely. In the confined space of a car or a hotel room, using a single, perfectly placed shot means there is minimal struggle, no follow-up shots that draw attention, and crucially, no noise that alerts staff or witnesses.
That explains why the hotel staff in Juja did not report hearing any commotion or gunshot sounds during the second murder.
The precision made the crime silent and instantaneous, maximizing her window for evasion.
And if we look at the final piece of her profile, her personal life, the context deepens again.
It does. She was married to a senior police officer attached to the Maritime Police Unit in Mombasa. However, the sources all confirmed the marriage was turbulent, marked by public confrontations over infidelity.
They were separated.
They had separated, but they maintained an agreement to co-parent their 2 children.
So we have this complex layering of factors. Certified professional competence in lethal force, insider knowledge of police procedures from anti-crime work, psychological insight gained through counseling skills, and a deeply troubled, volatile personal life defined by conflict and infidelity.
It was the perfect tragic storm that erupted in early July 2021.
As soon as that second murder was confirmed and the stolen weapon was definitively linked to Kangogo, the manhunt went national.
It did. Launched by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, the DCI. The DCI director at the time, George Kinoti, he pulled no punches.
He called her Sugu.
Yes, which in Kiswahili translates to tough or stubborn. This was not a routine declaration. It emphasized that she was a skilled adversary, describing her as armed and dangerous.
And what made the search so difficult was the professional self-awareness she possessed.
Absolutely. Having worked in the anti-crime unit at Nakuru police station and being familiar with DCI operations, she was acutely aware of police strategy. The sources are unanimous on this point. She knows their tactics, she knows their dragnets, she knows their schemes.
She knew the police playbook better than the people writing it. That internal knowledge explains the logistical success of her 5-day evasion.
It does.
But if she was so strategically minded, why commit the second murder so quickly, raising the national alarm exponentially? Was there a measure of, chaotic impulse driving this too?
That's a critical question. The rapid succession suggests a highly volatile state. While the method was calculated, the single shot, the phone trick, the choice to immediately acquire a second victim 200 kilometers away indicates that the personal drive or motive was perhaps overriding pure tactical thinking.
So she needed to keep moving.
She needed to keep moving and acting, suggesting either a high emotional state or a pre-planned spree. The strategy was focused on evasion rather than hiding. She knew she couldn't stay stationary, so she focused on defeating surveillance while actively continuing her targeted pattern.
And because of this targeted pattern, the DCI issued an explicit and very unusual public warning, focusing specifically on men.
Yeah, the official statement declared she was luring men into her trap before brutally killing them. That warning was absolutely unprecedented, focusing on the specific demographics of the victims and the alleged method of luring.
It confirmed that investigators believed her motive was highly targeted against male acquaintances.
Right. Potentially rooted in the volatility of her troubled marriage and relationship history. This warning itself just amplified the national panic.
Now let's talk about the reported evasion tactics and sightings during the hunt, which honestly sound like the plot of a high-budget action movie.
They really do.
Reports suggested she was dressing like a slay queen to lure men, using her clothing and appearance to blend seamlessly into civilian life while actively hunting new targets.
And that shift from a uniformed police officer to this civilian deceptive persona highlights the psychological mastery derived, perhaps, from her peer counseling background. She could project whatever appearance was necessary to manipulate the environment.
And crucially, she wasn't relying on private means of transport that could be easily tracked.
No, she was reportedly seen using a public service vehicle, or PSV Kenya's public transport system, in regions like Eldoret and Marakwet.
Hiding in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight among the general population made focused law enforcement tracking incredibly difficult.
And adding to the confusion, there are reports of deliberate misdirection. Her phone signal, which was from the device she left at the first crime scene, was reportedly traced to Kisumu at one point.
That's textbook counter-surveillance. Leaving the device active and mobile, maybe in the hands of an unwitting third party, allowed investigators to waste time and resources tracking a device she had already abandoned. It's a classic example of using the institution's reliance on digital tracking against itself.
The audacity escalated further with reports that she sent threatening messages to senior police officers, causing some to flee into hiding. The idea that a single fugitive corporal could terrorize high-ranking officers is just astonishing.
It speaks volumes about the perceived danger and her knowledge of internal police operations. If she was in fact sending threatening messages, she likely knew specific vulnerabilities, routines, or personal details about these officers. This knowledge would cause legitimate fear among her former superiors,
demonstrating that even while on the run, she was capable of psychological warfare. Furthermore, the concern that she might target a third victim was very real. A specific rumor circulated that a medic in Kisi reported to be her boyfriend, was in immediate danger.
And this prompted officers to issue urgent public warnings, asking for assistance in notifying him.
So the public was essentially tasked with saving a potential victim.
Yes, which highlights the desperation of the police to track her down before she could strike again. The search was no longer just about apprehension. It was a race against time to save lives.
The overall public reaction was one of complete disbelief mixed with this morbid fascination.
It was.
Kenyans compared the real-life events to a movie script, or even James Bond. People were hooked, analyzing her backstory and trying to rationalize her motivation.
But underneath the intrigue was a deep, pervasive feeling of national insecurity. It's hard to overstate the erosion of public trust caused by this case.
I read one commentator who perfectly captured the anxiety.
How did they say?
They said, "We go home every evening not knowing if we're going to meet a thug on the way or a cop on the way."
That quote encapsulates the total breakdown of the essential compact. When the police are feared as much as or more than the criminals, the entire social fabric feels threatened.
And the panic had tragically tangible consequences. We have to detail the incident of mistaken identity that occurred during the hunt.
Yes, a middle-aged woman named Fanny Shamutai was shot and seriously injured in Trans-Nzoia County by a man who mistakenly believed she was the fugitive Kangogo.
That is just awful.
That tragic incident perfectly illustrates the high level of public hysteria and the sense of fear that permeated society. People were on high alert, visually scanning everyone, and the mere suspicion of resemblance was enough to trigger violence from fearful citizens. The national panic led directly to an innocent person being seriously harmed.
Proving that Kangogo's actions had consequences far beyond her direct victims.
Far beyond.
The intensive, high-profile manhunt finally reached its confirmed end on the morning of Friday, July 16, 2021.
That's right. Caroline Kangogo committed suicide by shooting herself dead.
And this occurred at Annan, Elgeyo Marakwet County, specifically at her parents' home.
The Hanyowa home. The choice of location is poignant. After 5 days of strategic evasion across 200 kilometers, the spree ended where it began, in a deeply personal and familial space.
Suggesting perhaps a final act of control or desperation.
It could be.
And the evidence recovered at the scene was conclusive, aligning with the pattern of the crimes.
A Cheska pistol and a spent cartridge were found. This confirmed that the stolen service weapon was the instrument of her final act. The incident was officially confirmed by the Rift Valley Regional Commissioner, George Natembeya.
Her death ended the immediate physical threat, but it immediately opened up a new wave of frustration.
The procedural aftermath. This phase centered on the inability to achieve closure, particularly when the scheduled post-mortem examination at the Iton County Referral Hospital failed to take place.
And this failure, right at the point where the national drama should have subsided, forced the burial to be postponed.
Which sparked a painful conflict between the grieving family and the legal authorities.
Kangogo's father, Mr. Courier, and the family expressed profound disappointment and grievance.
You can imagine. They had waited for hours at the hospital and had actually brought a coffin, anticipating the immediate release of her remains so they could proceed with rites.
That delay wasn't just an inconvenience, it stalled the culturally essential process of mourning and closure.
And they didn't just express frustration privately, they went public. They publicly accused the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, the DCI, of actively reneging on their word.
What exactly did the family claim the DCI promised, and why were they so upset?
The family claimed that the DCI had previously allowed them to proceed with burial arrangements on Wednesday, giving them the expectation that the remains would be released promptly on Friday.
So they show up with a cot bin ready for the burial and nothing.
Nothing. When the DCI suddenly halted the post-mortem, allegedly without a clear explanation for the delay, the family felt betrayed. This amplified the public perception that the authorities were mishandling the entire situation, even after the suspect was dead.
This breakdown in communication and procedure forced the family to issue a public call for the immediate release of her remains.
So they could finally proceed with burial rites. It just added a final, chaotic layer of bureaucratic conflict to an already shocking case, highlighting how the institutional complexities continued to cause distress long after the hunt had concluded.
The inability to get closure, even after the suspect's death, just maintained that high emotional tension in the country.
This case is a study in calculated violence and evasion. When we look back at the core takeaways, the elements that made Corporal Kangogo such a unique threat stand out immediately.
First, the professional capacity. She was a certified police sharpshooter. That single detail explains the lethal efficiency of her crimes.
One bullet, no struggle, no sound, maximizing her ability to execute and disappear.
Second, the tactical planning. The deliberate abandonment of her mobile phone, the calculated travel of 200 kilometers, and the use of PSVs and disguises to defeat the police dragnet.
And third, her deep institutional knowledge gained from her work in the high-pressure anti-crime unit. She understood police procedures, the surveillance points, and the predictable schemes of her former colleagues.
This internal knowledge allowed her to stay one step ahead for 5 terrifying days while the entire nation watched.
And of course, the motive was strictly contained to a specific targeting pattern. Male victims who were known to her, signaling a highly personal, calculated motive born of internal conflict.
The final connection to you, the listener, lies in the broader implications for public trust. This case shattered the essential compact between the police and the public.
It really did.
The sudden juxtaposition of a sworn protector becoming the greatest source of fear caused widespread, intense insecurity, forcing people to confront the question of who guards the guardians. It demands difficult introspection regarding police accountability, mental health screening for those carrying lethal weapons, and the internal culture of law enforcement institutions.
Absolutely. And that leads us to our final provocative thought, something to mull over as you process the magnitude of these events. We return to that one unique detail in her background that seems to stand in stark contrast to her actions.
Her certificate in peer counseling.
Her certificate in peer counseling. She was trained in understanding and managing human emotion, and yet she embarked on this destructive path.
So was the peer counseling skill set merely a tactical aid to her evasion, helping her read her hunters and maintain her facade of control? Or does that detail offer the single most profound glimpse into the underlying psychological turmoil? Could her training in psychology have made her acutely aware of her own fracturing psyche, driving a calculated, desperate, and ultimately self-destructive path that ended only when she chose it to end?
The complexity of that final question, the professional who understood the mind, turning that knowledge into a weapon of self-destruction, is something the public and indeed investigators will continue to explore.
A chilling and deeply complex case. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.